What we need is not more medication, but more education, because the best prescription is knowledge. This is Exposé coming to you live from Lagos, Nigeria, every Monday on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook simultaneously. And I'm the regular host, Tony Akinyemi. Don't forget, what we need is not more medication, but more education, because the best prescription is knowledge. Hello and welcome to Exposé with Tony Akinyemi this beautiful Monday evening, 8 p.m. West African time on YouTube and Facebook simultaneously. Wherever you are joining us from, we thank you for joining us this evening. Please call on your friends and neighbors and tell them Exposé is live. And in case you are yet to subscribe to our channel or like us on Facebook, please go ahead and do so right away. We started this conversation on the major principle and fundamental principle of healthy living, the plus and minus principle, the things that we need to add to our lives and the things that we need to remove from our lives if we want to prevent disease or reverse disease and enjoy robust health and well-being. And then we came up with three categories: things that everybody must eliminate, things that you must eliminate if you're allergic to them, and things you must eliminate if they are contraindicated for you. Now we are dealing with the general ones, and we have compiled a list of 12 different things to eliminate by everyone, and we call it the dirty dozen. All right, we have looked at 3 of them already in previous episodes. We've looked at sugar, refined sugar, soft drinks, packaged fruit juices as number 1. We've looked at artificial sweeteners as number 2. We've looked at fast food and fried food as number 3. Now, let me add this to fast food and fried foods. Of course, I made some distinctions by saying that when you stir fry or saute, that is still okay. All right. And then for fast food, it's not necessarily all kinds of fast foods that are not healthy. In Africa, for example, in West Africa in particular, where I live, we have a lot of fast food restaurants, and what that simply means is that the foods are all just ready there, unlike traditional restaurants where for the most part you get there, they take your order and then they are going to prepare it specifically customized for you. But these are restaurants where all the foods are already made and they're there waiting to be dished, okay? And we have a number of very fantastic Nigerian foods in particular that are on offer. Amala, gbegiri, ewedu, that kind of a thing, if you know what I mean. For those of you who understand those Nigerian food, Nigerian jollof rice, wow. Okay, now, apart from those that are acceptable, but when I talk about fast foods, I'm talking especially of convenient foods, things that are made with all kinds of things that are not healthy for us. So you need to make that distinction. Today, we are continuing with the dirty dozen, and we're going to number 4 on our list of the dirty dozen, and that is monosodium glutamate, MSG. MSG is both an excitotoxin as well as a neurotoxin. In other words, it can be toxic to your central nervous system, particularly your brain, because monosodium glutamate is actually not a nutrient, it's a chemical, and it is a taste enhancer. What it does is to send signals to the portion of your brain that controls taste, to kind of give you a stimulation in that part of your brain to make you start, having the sensation of good taste in your mouth as you eat it, okay? Now, when monosodium glutamate is metabolized in the body, it releases formaldehyde. You heard me right, yes? Formaldehyde. And what is formaldehyde? Do you know what formaldehyde is? Embalming fluid. That's what they use to embalm the dead in the mortuary. One of the things they use to embalm the dead. Formaldehyde. So when monosodium glutamate is metabolized in the body, it releases formaldehyde. And so MSG can cause all kinds of health problems for people. It can cause seizures, especially in children. I mentioned that also for aspartame. Aspartame, monosodium glutamate are things that any child that is experiencing seizures of any kind those things should be taken away from their diet. And I can share stories with you of children, young children under 10, particularly 3, 4, 5, 6-year-olds that are experiencing seizures. And as a nutritionist, I advise their parents to remove all those excitotoxins and neurotoxins from their diet. MSG, none of those bouillon cubes should be used to cook their food. Take it away. All those noodles that have spices in them, those seasoning and spices in those noodles are loaded with monosodium glutamate, and they can cause seizures in children. Aspartame can cause seizures in children. And so I tell parents, please, if your children have seizures, take them off. In fact, I recommend very strongly that no child should be abused with aspartame or monosodium glutamate. It should be taken from their diet altogether. MSG can cause headaches and migraines. I have seen women who are experiencing a lot of migraines and they consume a lot of monosodium glutamate in their diet because they almost can't cook without using those cubes. So I tell them, hey, you have to stay away from monosodium glutamate. You have to stay away from caffeine. You have to stay away from aspartame. You have to stay away from sugar, soft drinks, and all of those things will help you to improve on your headaches and migraines. And then you have to take magnesium-rich food or take magnesium supplements or magnesium oil spray that you spray on your skin and it's absorbed through your skin into your body. That can help to calm down headaches and migraines. Of course, there are certain herbs that also help, like feverfew. MSG can also cause sleeping disorders, okay? It can cause or aggravate asthma. It can contribute to the development or aggravation of diabetes. It can cause or contribute to the development of cataracts. It can cause or aggravate attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, particularly in children, ADHD. Aspartame can contribute to or aggravate irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, colitis, that's inflammation of the colon. It can cause and aggravate peptic ulcer, duodenal ulcer, stomach ulcer, gastritis, esophagitis. It can also aggravate or cause hemorrhoids, pile. So if you have any of these conditions, you have asthma, cataract is developing in your eyes, you have children that are experiencing or suffering from attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, colitis, peptic ulcer, or pile, hemorrhoid, one of the best things you can do for yourself is to eliminate monosodium glutamate. And some people are even beginning to suspect that it might be a contributor to cancer as well. Okay, so in which kind of foods do we find MSG, monosodium glutamate? It is found in most chemical seasonings, particularly the cubes. Some of them are in granules, okay? You need to be careful with them. They are found in the seasonings that come with some instant noodles, that you cook in a few minutes and then you season it with that small sachet inside. It's loaded with MSG. It's found in convenience foods and fast foods and some processed supermarket foods. Then there is something about MSG I need to let you know. I remember there was a time I did a health seminar somewhere and I mentioned some specific products and brands when I was asked, because I just gave a generic name. I didn't mention any brand name, that MSG is not good for you. Okay, and some people asked me specifically, can you tell us some products that have MSG in them? And I said, well, I don't want to demarket anybody. It's not my intention at all. So I'm not going to mention specific name. But they said, look, what you have taught us will be useless to us if we don't know the products that these things are found in. And so I was forced to mention some brand names. I didn't know that one of the company representatives of the company that produced one of the things I mentioned was actually present in that particular seminar. And she began to make frantic calls, to her office to say, hey, somebody is beginning to talk about our products and mentioning one of the ingredients in the product that is not okay. And before I knew it, after a few months, I began to see billboards and advertisements all over the place, and they are beginning to say, oh, there's no MSG in our products. The ingredient is this, the ingredient is that. They had changed the name even on their website from MSG because they listed the ingredients in their product, and MSG was number 1 on the list. And if you're familiar with food manufacturing, you know that you have to list your ingredients on the package, okay? And the most abundant ingredient in your product comes as number 1. So when you see the list of ingredients in any particular product, particularly food products or medicines, the number 1 ingredient on the list is the one that is most abundant. And when I checked, particularly that morning before I went for that seminar, at the website of that company, I found that MSG was number 1. It constituted about 50% or so of the total amount of ingredients in that product. If you go to that same website right now, they've changed the name from MSG to something else. But because I am initiated, I am informed about monosodium glutamate, I know the alternate names that they use. We call them camouflage names. Now, so I'm going to tell you the many camouflage names that can be used to camouflage MSG, so you won't know that it's MSG. Now, MSG is camouflaged by food manufacturers by changing the name to hydrolyzed vegetable protein. So when you see hydrolyzed vegetable protein, is MSG, another name for MSG. Hydrolyzed plant protein, hydrolyzed soy protein, vegetable protein extract, textured protein, whey protein concentrate, sodium caseinate, calcium caseinate, autolyzed yeast, and what have you, and many more that space will not permit us to talk about. Now, so what are the alternatives to MSG seasoning? You can use herbal seasonings such as curry, very fantastic and health-giving too, thyme, ginger, garlic, bay leaves, basil, oregano, dill, and what have you. And then in my part of the world, in Nigeria, particularly Western Nigeria, we have things like iru, which is like fermented locust beans. Then we have ogiri, which is kind of fermented melon seeds. And those are fantastic seasonings that you can use in place of those chemical seasonings containing monosodium glutamate and other things that are unhealthy. Now, very recently, I began to see some of these bouillon cubes. They are beginning to make them without MSG. I haven't studied them well to know how true they are, but I've seen advertisements saying our own bouillon cube does not contain MSG, it's MSG free. In fact, there are restaurants around the world now that their marketing slogan now is this restaurant is MSG free. That means that everybody is beginning to accept the fact that MSG affects health negatively. Don't go away, we're going to go on a short break, and I'll be back very shortly to continue this beautiful conversation this Monday evening. God bless you. I'll be back shortly.
The Anatomy of Begging is the latest book written by Rev Tony Akinyemi. This book has been written for the benefit of the church as a lens through which it can tell who indeed is the needy. You can get a copy of this book from Amazon.com or visit our bookstore, The Shepherd Store at 18 Shogunle Street off Mobolaji Bank, Anthony Way, behind Etebet Place, Abule Onigbagbo Bus Stop, Ikeja, Lagos.
Welcome back. This is Exposé with Tony Akinyemi this beautiful Monday evening. And we're talking about the dirty dozen. We have looked at 4 of them so far. And now I want to continue with item number 5 on the list of our dirty dozen disease promoters to be removed, to be subtracted, to be eliminated, to be avoided, to abstain from. All right. Now, number 5 is gluten, or gluten-rich foods. Okay, I understand the fact that not everybody reacts negatively to gluten, but then most foods that are gluten high actually have been re-engineered, so to speak, genetically modified to increase the gluten content much more than the way that God actually made it for us to consume. Okay, now wheat and wheat products are very high in gluten. They also contain another substance known as lectins. Now, the wheat that is available in modern times is different from what our forefathers ate or used to know. Modern day wheat has been hybridized or genetically modified to a variety that has a higher protein content. And that invariably means higher gluten and lectin content, because gluten and lectin are proteins, okay? And this because they want to increase the protein content of these grains, particularly with the poor in mind, who may not be able to afford animal protein. And so if they are eating high protein wheat, at least they can meet their protein needs. But unfortunately, when gluten goes too high, lectins go too high, that becomes a problem for human consumption. They begin to cause problems in our GI tract. All right, lectins are actually natural plant insecticides or pesticides that can cause leaky gut syndrome in humans in our gastrointestinal tract when it is too high in our diet. Okay, plants develop this, insecticide to protect themselves from infections or from insects, but there's a certain amount available in plant that humans can consume and it won't cause any problem. But when it's too high, it becomes a problem. And gluten also can be highly inflammatory and hyperallergenic. In other words, we have allergic reactions to gluten a lot. Now, so what are alternatives to high gluten products? I recommend flours based on buckwheat, for example, buckwheat flour, quinoa flour, kamut flour, barley flour, sorghum flour, rye flour. We have light rye and dark rye. These are all grains. Oat flour, even brown rice flour. Most of these are either completely gluten-free or very low in gluten. Number 6 on our dirty dozen that we must eliminate is cow's milk and dairy products made from cow's milk, apart from fermented products. Okay. Now, so why do we have to eliminate cow's milk from our diet? Okay. 1, because of lactose intolerance for some people. Number 2, because dairy cows are usually loaded with growth hormones. Okay. And then we have antibiotics in cow milk, so that the cows are fed with a lot of antibiotics, and that is present in their milk. Imagine yourself taking antibiotics every day for a whole year. You're not supposed to do that. When you're using antibiotics, it should be for a few days, 5 days to 10 days or thereabout. Then pasteurization damages cow milk. Cow's milk is also highly mucus forming. This is particularly not good for people with respiratory issues, people with COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases, things like asthma, things like emphysema, and what have you. Then the casein protein in cow milk is too high. The casein protein to whey protein ratio in cow milk is about 80 to 20. 80% casein protein, 20% whey protein. Whereas the reverse is the case for human milk. Human milk has only 20% casein protein and 80% whey protein, which is the customized ratio for human beings. Goat milk also has a similar ratio as human milk. But cow milk, the casein protein content is rather too high. Cow milk is also high in cholesterol, and it has also been homogenized such that the cholesterol globules, large globules that is not easily absorbed through the GI tract, have been broken down into minuscule globules that are easily absorbed to elevate your cholesterol when you take it. So what are the alternatives to cow milk? Tiger nut milk is a fantastic one. Almond milk, coconut milk, rice milk, sesame seed milk, cashew nut milk, and even goat milk. If you read your Bible in Proverbs chapter 27, verses 26 and 27, Proverbs chapter 27, verses 26 and 27, it actually recommends goat milk, not cow milk. Now, you see that I didn't mention soya milk because that's very controversial. I suggest, because most of the soya products out there today are genetically modified, so I suggest that you may have to eliminate that as well. Okay, but fermented soya products are fantastic anyway. Now, number 7 item is refined salt. Now, refined salt is also commonly known as common salt, table salt, iodized salt, and what have you. So what do we use in its place? We use sea salt, Himalayan pink salt, rock salt, and what have you. Any salt that has anti-caking agents in them should be avoided, because anti-caking agents are like microscopic broken glasses. They are added to salt so that they don't, turn to liquid. They don't absorb moisture and become liquefied. They stay dry and free-flowing. But those anti-caking agents are not healthy. They can damage the endothelium of your blood vessels and cause plaque deposits that can cause atherosclerosis, or hardening of your arteries, narrowing of your arteries, and that can lead to all kinds of cardiovascular problems. Number 8 to eliminate are processed foods, and that includes processed meats. Processed foods have been robbed of most of their nutrients. I tell people to eat food from God's plant rather than foods from a manufacturing plant. I want you to process that. Eat food from God's plant rather than food from a manufacturing plant. Now, processed foods, like I said, have been robbed of most of their nutrients. For example, when wheat is processed into white flour, the wheat bran, the fiber is gone. The wheat germ that has the oil and the fat-soluble vitamins is gone. So you have only partial wheat that is now ground into flour and then bleached to make it very good and free-flowing to bake your pastry products. Now, processed foods usually contain many toxic substances that have been added, like artificial flavors, artificial colors, artificial sweeteners, chemical preservatives, monosodium glutamate, and what have you. Processed foods are dead food lying in state. So when you go to the supermarket shelf and you see all those canned food, canned this, carton this, boxed this, that's dead food lying in state. Just pay your last respect and walk away. Go to the living food portion in your supermarket, where groceries fresh from the farm or farmers markets. Buy your cabbage, buy your broccoli, buy your cauliflower, your Brussels sprouts, buy your celery, your apple, your oranges, your carrots, your beetroot, your, lettuce, your arugula, your kale, you name it. These are living foods, still alive, bubbling with enzymes, particularly organic ones. Those are the alternatives when you eliminate all of these from your diet. Now, supermarket foods in cans, cartons, boxes, and bottles, you need to be very selective to know which ones are okay, which ones are not okay. And then number 9 on our list is fiberless foods. Foods that all the fiber have been removed except a few. White flour products in particular are fiberless because the wheat bran has been removed. Refined and processed foods, packaged fruit juices, soft drinks, refined sugar are all fiberless. You see, fiber, we used to call it roughage when I was in high school. Roughages, same thing as fiber. Fiber is needed for regular bowel movement so you don't get constipated. It also serves as prebiotics for your probiotics. In other words, food for your friendly flora, your friendly intestinal bacteria. They feed on this, all right? And they help you to produce vitamin K2 and vitamin B12 in a symbiotic relationship. They are feasting on your food waste and they are producing byproducts that are useful for you, vitamin K and vitamin B12. Now, constipation promotes disease. So when you eat high fiber food, which you find in whole grains, in fresh vegetables, in whole fruits, and what have you, then you prevent constipation. Now, so 9 dirty dozen items on the dirty dozen that I've highlighted. If we eliminate them, you find out that your health will spring forth like the noonday. Okay, don't forget the principle upon which this is predicated, the plus and minus principle. And the plus principle, the plus side of it are the things that you need to add to your diet and lifestyle to promote health. The minus side are the things you need to stop or eliminate or abstain from in your life in order to promote health. When you do this plus and the minus, then you are doing well on this principle of healthy living. and then you are on your journey to wellness and well-being. Now, this is how far we can go this evening. Next week, by the grace of God, we will be concluding the last episode in this series and in this season on nuggets on healthy living. Don't forget that what we need is not more medication, but more education. And the best prescription is knowledge. And that's why we are giving you information for your transformation. For to be informed is to be transformed. To be uninformed is to be deformed. Again, I'm your regular host, Tony Akinyemi. Thank you for spending your Monday evening with me on Exposé with Tony Akinyemi, brought to you by the Shepherd's Flock International Church. Please share this video after watching it with your friends, your colleagues, and your neighbors, and probably your enemies. And your enemies will become your friend. If you are yet to like us on Facebook, please go ahead and do so. If you are yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, please go ahead and do so. Also, press the notification button and you'll be reminded whenever we come live. Thank you. Have a wonderful and pleasant week ahead of you. God bless you, and Maranatha.
The Anatomy of Begging is the latest book written by Rev Tony Akinyemi. This book has been written for the benefit of the church as a lens through which it can tell who indeed is the needy. You can get a copy of this book from Amazon.com or visit our bookstore, The Shepherd Store at 18 Shogunle Street off Mobolaji Bank, Anthony Way, behind Etebet Place, Abule Onigbagbo Bus Stop, Ikeja, Lagos.